Welcome to episode 6 of the Connected Yoga Teacher podcast. I'm your host, Shannon Crow. I'm a mother of 3, a yoga teacher, and a consultant for yoga teachers and studios. This podcast was born of how I still feel each time I leave a teacher training. I sometimes feel isolated in the wilderness of yoga entrepreneurship. For me, a yoga teacher training offers me growth and learning, the motivation to practice, and most of all, a supportive community of other yoga teachers. My goal with this podcast is to have a place where you can feel connected as a yoga teacher to knowledge, inspiration, and community. As we hear about a variety of topics from yoga teachers and other professionals, topics like anatomy, philosophy, marketing, I want to make it a little easier for the yoga entrepreneurs out there so that they can share the yoga that lights them up. If you are a yoga teacher craving a little more connection, you might want to join our private Facebook group. Visit our website, theconnectedyogateacher.com, and click on Join Our Online Group for Yoga Teachers. I just talked with a yoga teacher today that said that she's a member of a few different Facebook groups and that she really does feel like there's a strong conversation and connection in our group. In today's episode, we're going to hear from a yoga teacher who I actually met on Facebook. Rosslyn Kemerer is the founder of Wholehearter Yoga. She's a yoga teacher who mainly teaches virtual private classes via Skype. Yep, online classes across the many miles or even to people in her local hometown. If you remember, we heard in episode 2 from Nina and her struggle with her own at-home practice. And after that episode, Nina and Rosslyn began to work together, virtually, through Skype. Rosslyn lives just outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Nina lives up near me on the Bruce Peninsula in Ontario, Canada. So virtual classes allowed these two to actually meet up online. And I really want to share here today a post that Nina wrote in March after this. Dear fellow sadhana-ers, not really sure if that's a term or not, but I just wanted to thank both Shannon and Rosslyn for helping me find this path. I completed my first sadhana on Sunday, and I'm so grateful for it. I learned a lot about myself and how I treat myself. I will often invite my yoga students to send themselves love, but I really didn't know what that meant until now. The importance of sending self-love is to be open to receive it and honor it. Before my sadhana, I had a lot of trouble connecting with myself emotionally. I was literally shut off from experiencing any emotions. Through my sadhana, I have found ways to emotionally connect with myself, communicate clearly, openly, and honestly to myself and others. And I'm so much more confident and trusting in myself. My heart is open to give and receive, and I am my own inspiration and light. Living in the present and treating myself with kindness has been both very grounding and freeing. I no longer hold myself to unsustainable standards. I have this feeling of having unlimited potential, and it feels great. In the past few weeks, I've signed up for some yoga teacher training, and I'm currently pursuing a new career path. Pretty cool, eh? I'm really proud of myself and grateful for the support and guidance I received along the way. Thank you so much, Nina, for sharing that. Thank you, Rosslyn, for the work that you did with Nina to bring that all about. We know that the real teacher is inside of us, and sometimes it just takes a great mentor to help us to unearth that a little bit. So if you want to go back and hear episode 2, you can just visit our website, theconnectedyogateacher.com/2, and that will take you to that episode. All of the episodes are there with lots of show notes. So as we dive in today, you're going to hear that I have a lot of questions for Rosslyn because I myself would like to teach more virtual online private yoga classes, maybe someday. And I also know that a lot of the yoga teachers that I work with and teachers in our private Facebook group have also expressed interest in teaching virtual private classes. So as we dive in, remember that all of the show notes are ready for you when you go to theconnectedyogateacher.com. So let's dive in and hear from Rosslyn. So welcome everyone. Today I'm speaking with Rosslyn, who is a yoga teacher who I connected with because she teaches a lot of online classes. And this is one area that I think is great for us as teachers to use in both ways. One way being a student, and the other way to share our yoga with people who are far away from us or unable to get to class in some way. So welcome, Rosslyn.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. First of all, where did your yoga journey start?
My yoga journey started, I did graphic design for years. That's what I went to school for. So I had a lot of physical pain, hip tightness, low back pain. And then on top of that, I've always been a runner. So I was running on a body that was not really prepared for that in many ways. And I was really hard on myself physically. So I turned to yoga shortly after college and kind of got into the heated classes, the hot vinyasa stuff from there. But I quickly found that physically it was healing my body on so many levels. I was able to kind of get out of physical therapy I had been in for a long time. And then from there, I'm sure you're familiar with the process where it just kind of starts to change everything mentally and emotionally. So I still loved to run, but it became much less competitive for me, and my body changed so much that I just knew I wanted to dive into teacher training and kind of share that in any way that I could.
Nice. So when did you take your yoga teacher training?
I took my first training in 2011, and so I've kind of been teaching ever since then.
Nice. And I do agree, and I get that, how yoga can really heal your body on so many levels. I like how you put that.
Yeah.
And that it starts to change everything and get into other parts of your life. Where are you located?
I'm located just outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Okay. How long have you been teaching online classes?
I've been teaching online classes just a little over a year now. I kind of tried to start it up about 4 years ago, but it was kind of before I really had a plan with it. So I threw it out there, but I didn't really have any way to actually get clients to be seeing it. So I didn't really get started until about last year.
And do you teach group classes, private classes, or both?
Online, I only teach private classes. I haven't really thought much about offering group classes online yet, but that's a possibility.
The people that are finding your online private classes, are they local or are they from around the world?
It's kind of a little of both. A lot of my current local private students have used Skype on and off for different reasons. So like if the weather is bad or if they couldn't get a babysitter to come for their regular session, we'll just hop onto Skype. And it's been a really nice way to add a little bit more flexibility to the sessions. But then there's also recently been just some people randomly finding me through my website that are not local. And I think that's just been a result of me kind of pushing my marketing and blogging and everything more so that it's starting to come up and just be seen a little easier.
Nice. So what do you think is a really effective thing that you're using right now to market?
I think Instagram works really well for me just because as any yoga instructor, people want to practice with you because you're you. So I think Instagram is a really nice way to sort of express some of my personal practice and, the space that I'm teaching in and bring some of the yoga teachings into what I'm sharing when I can, so that it becomes a way that I think people feel that they can know me just through, Instagram and Facebook accounts.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's fantastic. I know I follow you on Instagram, and I really like, especially you've been showing things that look very restorative and cozy.
Yeah, it's that time of year.
Yeah, so I've liked that a lot.
Yeah, thank you.
When you set up a session, so can you kind of walk us through what that looks like? Say someone contacted you from far away. How do you do, how do you set up the waiver form, or do you have a waiver form for students?
I do have a little waiver statement kind of integrated into my online form. That was sort of a recent addition once I realized that I did need something like that virtually. So I just have a little intake form on my website that I send clients directly there as a place to start. And I just have a bunch of questions set up so that some of it is multiple choice, or they can check boxes based on how they might be feeling lately, what their schedule is like, things like that, so that I try to really get a good idea of what they need from their practice and what their experience level is, and things like that mentally and physically, so that I can get an idea of what they're looking for and craft their lesson from there.
And then in terms of scheduling and setting that up, do you do that via email?
Yeah, I do that via email. It's not necessarily the best way. I think eventually it would be cool to have an online scheduling setup, but I've avoided that lately just because I schedule sometimes on the half an hour, or, some people could come or see me at 8, but not 8:15. So it gets a little sketchy as far as providing my entire schedule available online. I didn't really want to have that totally out there. So I think it also, for me, kind of adds a personal component with my students, that it's totally okay for them to text me or email me directly, and we can get on a more personal level right away, because I don't have that many students. So it's working for now.
Nice. That's great that you make yourself available, text and email. I think that's so important, especially when you're working privately with students.
Yeah, it's so intimate.
One scheduling thing that I do use now recently, because it became free, is Schedulicity.
I never heard of that.
I want to say it was $20 or $30 American, around in that price range. And then they just recently made it free for up to, I think, 20 bookings a month. I'll post the link here and I'll also share it with you.
Awesome.
It allows you also to schedule time off. So if you're busy all other times, it doesn't tell people what you're doing, but they can just book in there. Yeah. So I will send that to you. You use Skype, you said. And that works pretty well?
Yeah, I haven't had any trouble with it, really. The main thing that, I kind of encourage people before we begin the session or before we have the call is to set up a sample call or use their video to just check and make sure that I'll be able to see their entire body, and that it's not, backlit or anything weird that would make it hard for me to see them.
Okay, this raises a really good point, and more questions maybe from me. So you're watching them as they do the yoga practice. So are you also demoing, or are you mostly using your voice?
I am not demoing. Usually the way that I teach, especially with privates, is I just don't like to rely on demonstrating. If it's something that for whatever reason I can't communicate clearly, or if the client is unsure about, then I have space to kind of step back away from the computer and demo it if I need to. So I've used that a little bit, but for the most part, I try to just give really clear directions on what's happening and kind of go from there.
That's fantastic. That really shows that you're watching, what your students are doing. I know it can be challenging. Myself, I remember when I first started teaching yoga, I was really doing the class more than...
Me too. Yeah.
That comes with practice and with time for sure.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips for yoga teachers who might want to do this for their own business, like set this up? Do you have anything that you've learned along the way that you thought, wow, it would have been easier if I would have known that first?
Yeah, for sure. I think it would have been, like I said, how I tried to start it a few years ago, and it wasn't the right timing for many reasons. So I think it's important to not try to jump into it before you're ready. So maybe not to view Skype or online offerings necessarily as easier or anything different than what you're already doing. But I think it's really important to have that hands-on, one-on-one interaction a lot with in-person private sessions before translating to online, because you'll need to kind of feel your way around the differences and what you can and can't be sharing energetically with that person when they're not actually in your space.
Right.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yes, that makes total sense. Do you ever feel like, if I was right there, then I could do this? Or
sometimes, yeah, but there's also been some other times where I just feel such an amazing, like I've tapped into it and I feel so connected to them sometimes that I'm just so grateful to have that online platform to feel like I am right there with them.
That's great. Well,
Yeah.
Even here today, we've had 2 days of snow, and I know a lot of my students would not travel out on a day like today. So that raises a really good point, that it's more connection than someone not coming to class, and
Right.
it still is one-on-one, and you're in their home. Is there anything then that you send them when you said that you go over the tips and the lighting? Is there anything that you send them? Like, you don't send them logistics of like, put your screen here, or?
Yeah, I don't really have anything formal, developed for that yet. It hasn't really been necessary, but yeah, I've totally thought about, putting together some sort of little email outline or something that just has all of those tips, but it's really not much. And I don't want to, overcomplicate it or have them worrying about the angle of the screen. I just kind of need to be able to see their body. And then I usually also let them know that I won't be demonstrating, because I found that a lot of students are really used to that. And so whenever we start and my face is right in front of the screen and, they're checking in with me regularly, it's easier for me to just let them know right off the bat that, this is a practice for their body, and that usually they don't need to watch what I am or am not doing.
That's fantastic. It's nice to let them know before.
Yeah.
I really like that.
Yeah.
Do you find that people have like distracting spaces at home? Like, I'm thinking of my own home with cats and children.
Yeah, totally. Sometimes there's, pets and all sorts of nonsense coming and going. But that's what I think is so awesome about any home practice, but especially kind of empowering someone through an online Skype session, that they can practice at home in their space, and they can totally be surrounded by all of the usual noises and distractions or whatever it is, and still have a really deep connection with themselves and a really sacred practice. And I even had one student who's an awesome example that he has like 4 or 5 kids. And so all of his practices are early in the morning. He sneaks up into his attic. It's just an unfinished, freezing cold attic space, but it works for us. I can see him clearly, and he's kind of removed partially from the rest of his household, and it works well.
That's great. I was actually going to ask you that because I know my own yoga practice is early in the morning, and sometimes as a teacher, sometimes I'm really missing out on being in a class, but I wake up slowly. I kind of sit there with a tea for 20 minutes.
Yeah, staring.
and then start. But do you have set hours?
Not really. I think that the 9-to-5 job that I used to have really kind of traumatized me a little bit in a way. So a lot of my experience was that I felt so stuck having those regular hours that it's meant a lot to me to be able to create my own schedule. So right now, anyway, I really like that it's not the same every week. And it works well for my students too, because many of them have jobs or, family responsibilities or other things that they can't commit to the same time every week. So it makes it easier for me to honor my schedule or the time that I need for myself each week, and also be able to kind of work around what's new for them or changing seasons and things like that. So it's definitely not the same every week, but I do always allow myself definite time to practice each day for my own. And then usually 2 full days off a week are pretty important to me.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
2 full days out of 7.
Yes. Yeah.
What about in terms of props? Do you require them to have like a yoga mat?
Yoga mat usually isn't needed. If I find that someone is having trouble on their hands and knees, or maybe they're on a wood floor with nothing, I'll suggest it for next time, or they can grab a blanket or something. So I don't require a yoga mat or anything. I say that if they have blocks or anything they might usually use, they can have them around. But I really try to teach in a way that they can access the postures without props, so that they don't feel like they can't do it when they don't have a prop. And then occasionally, if I know that I'd really like to work on something specific with someone, I might shoot them an email the day before and say, hey, could you make sure you have a towel available for this practice? We're going to use it for a couple things, or, things like that.
That's fantastic. That makes it so accessible to people.
Right.
Beginners, especially.
Yeah, that's important. I don't want people to feel like they have to make this huge investment into something they're not quite sure about,
Mm-hmm. I didn't even have a yoga mat when I became a yoga teacher.
Yeah, I had one that was, it was so crappy. It was like a $8, version that was literally falling apart into little chunks when I went through my teacher training. So,
oh, that's good. Yay.
Yeah.
People are like, what kind of mat should I get? And I just think, unless you're going to really go all out and get a Cadillac of a mat, let's just say anything or nothing. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's not important.
So walk us through kind of also the packages that you might have available for students.
Most of the time for local students that I'm seeing in person, I've found that it works best for me that I only really offer 5-pack sessions. It's partially for me and partially for them that there's some accountability and kind of an instant commitment to our relationship, so that they're really getting the full experience of what I can offer and what they can get from a practice with, around 5 sessions. Online sessions are a little different. I do offer one-off sessions currently for Skype. And I also offer a 30-minute option, which is really nice sometimes if people can't fit in a full hour. So it's just a little different, a little more flexible. And that might change in the future as well if I feel like it would be better to offer the Skype sessions in a package. But for now, it's been nice because occasionally people will just want 1 or 2 Skype sessions here and there if they're traveling or whatever. So I think it's nice to have that option available for now.
Okay, that really makes sense. So 30 minutes or an hour. Mm-hmm. Do you think you'd ever switch to be like Skype sessions? They have to book a package with you, or do you like that the way it's set up?
I might switch, or I might at least offer that option. But for now, like I said, I'm not sure that I don't want to exclude some of my local students from being able to purchase 1 or 2 Skype sessions.
Okay. That's interesting. How many people locally then book a Skype session with you?
I would say that a little over half of my students have at least tried it, which surprised me as well. But I think that some of them just wanted the experience of practicing in their own home, without necessarily having to pay me extra to come out there, or that, if they live a little too far away for it to be practical. Other students that are sort of what I like to call semi-local, they're maybe like a little over an hour away. Some of them have started out in person. They'll come to me 2 or 3 times, and then we'll kind of transfer over to Skype. So that's worked really well too.
Nice. Well, I think this would be an amazing addition for any teacher, and I'm speaking specifically from myself. It's great to reach out and connect with other teachers, so I would love to see more teachers doing this, especially can you imagine if they're in different time zones and it actually works better with someone's schedule, someone who wants a really early morning practice.
Yeah.
It might be middle of the day for a different time zone. Mm-hmm. Do you currently have any yoga teachers right now who are working with you online?
I do have a couple teachers that I just kind of do some consulting with, but not really in the form of private sessions online.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So tell me about that with the consulting.
Mostly I just do marketing and kind of business consulting, but it's really kind of light, not because I don't feel like I have a lot to offer, but just because I don't want to bite off more than I can chew time wise. So I enjoy mentoring to people, and I enjoy receiving mentorship from other, teachers and clients and everything like that as well. But for the most part, it's just kind of maybe design consulting or website consulting or scheduling or things like that.
That's fantastic. Good to know. It's great when that's available to teachers. I know that I feel like that was a big part that was missing, and that's what's been driving me more and more to do the consulting. So I like that.
Yeah, me too. There really hasn't been much available until maybe the past 2 years. I've noticed more and more popping up, but we need it.
Yeah, we do. Is there anything else that you wanted to share with yoga teachers that you feel like this would help them? Kind of any advice in general or specifically to teaching private classes or even more so online classes, any of those?
I would say sort of in general, but geared toward private sessions. I just think that it's really awesome for more and more teachers to become comfortable with the idea of teaching privates. It's not necessarily the main focus of every teacher training, but I think that if you can sort of find a way to play around with some friends or family and practice really deeply paying attention to their breath and their facial expressions and everything that you can sort of pick up on an energetic and a soul level, then the way that you're teaching and sharing yoga is going to improve leaps and bounds for your group classes or your online offerings and everything else you do. So I think that kind of stepping into private yoga teaching is a really great way to create more intimacy and connection with your students, as well as enhance your own teaching practice.
I really see such a difference in the students that I work with privately. I see them move along in a different way than my group classes.
Yeah.
So I like that. And it also does really strengthen the teacher. One last question kind of about the online versus in-person classes. Is there a difference in the price between the two?
Yeah. For me right now, since my in-person sessions are offered in packages, they are slightly more discounted than it would be if someone were to purchase one private session in person. But the Skype sessions are still a little bit, maybe about 10% less than what an in-person client would be paying for one session. So I think it's important, just sort of a principle of the matter, that it is at least slightly less, because there isn't an option for me to be offering props or hands-on adjustments and assistance and things like that, all the little extra things that they might be getting in person. So that's just kind of a message that I'm sending. It's not that it's less valuable, but just that there is a little bit missing out from being in person.
Right. And I bet it helps when you're not having to pay for travel and space rental and all of that as well.
Right. Yeah.
If people are in your area, where can they find a class with you?
Right now, I'm not really teaching that many group classes. I kind of took a break for the holidays from some of the group classes I have been teaching, but I do teach once a week at Anytime Fitness Gym in Irwin. And then here and there, I'm subbing at some local studios, and I usually post that on my website and Facebook when I do.
Okay, so I'll put a link to your website, and it's wholehearteryoga.com. I'll make sure that we put that in the show notes. You were telling me about a challenge that's happening, and it may have already passed when we launched this, the 30-day home practice kit, but let's chat about it anyway for a moment in case you run it again, or for people who are interested in hearing more about that.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. I will be launching it again. The one that I'm currently doing is just about sold out. It's launching this week, but I plan to do this every couple months or so. It's called the Practice Project, and it's a 30-day home practice kind of kit that I've spent a lot of time developing. It's basically 30 daily emails, and I created it in a way so that it's only going to start when it's full, and I'm kind of capping it at around 10 people. So each time it launches, everyone is practicing together, everyone is on the same page, and there's a Facebook group to kind of connect and go along with that. And the way that I've done it is I've tried to kind of create a ton of variety and kind of smush it into 30 days so that it's useful and people are getting a good idea of all the different ways that you can practice and experience yoga. So it's not all necessarily movement or asana. There's some guided meditation, there's some writing exercises and worksheets and things like that. So I tried to kind of come at it from different angles to access different learning styles and preferences. And so I'm hoping that it goes well. I'd like to do it again soon.
Oh, that's amazing. And then are there videos with that as well, or is it email and Facebook group and kind of cheering people on? Or
yeah, there's a couple videos. I made about 3 or 4. They're pretty rough. There's been a learning curve for iMovie and everything, but I enjoyed doing it, and I think they're decent for what they're being used for and everything. So there's some podcasts and audio and video and everything I could think of, basically.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing this with us today. And I'm excited to see if some yoga teachers take that on to either bring this more into their own business or to reach out to you as a mentor, because you have a lot to share. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I would love to help anyone who has any questions or needs any help or guidance. I would enjoy sharing more.
So there we have it, connected yoga teachers, lots of information. Maybe you feel really inspired to look at how you could teach virtual private classes, or maybe it's something that you want to keep in the back of your mind for future. I've collected a few notes for us here, just in summary of what Rosslyn said. So she said to be ready to teach private yoga classes in person first, and that would help build that private yoga class muscle. She also talked about having an online waiver, and I will actually link to her new client form that she has on her website. And we discussed scheduling. I'm going to also put a link in here for Schedulicity, but there are lots of other scheduling apps that you can use. We had a discussion in our private Facebook group, and there's a whole list of scheduling apps that different teachers use in there. We talked about whether or not to have an email about setting up the video, and also to let students know if you will or will not be doing demos. So Rosslyn expressed how she lets students know. And then in terms of other things to remember, maybe the props, how you're going to package the classes, and the prices, to have all of that sort of set up in your mind, ready to go. If you have specific questions about teaching virtual private classes, I would highly suggest reaching out to Rosslyn. She does mentorship with yoga teachers, and maybe you even want to reach out to her in terms of her teaching you some online yoga. A huge shout out of thanks for our sponsor for today's episode. This episode has been brought to you by the Movement Research Intensive that is hosted by Diane Bruni. The Movement Research Intensive is a movement education program designed for yoga teachers, movement educators, athletes, dancers, and curious movers. To find out more about Diane's 9-day intensive training that she hosts, visit dianebruni.com. That's DianeBruni.com. I'm actually going to go to the next Movement Research Intensive. It's in June. I'm really excited to bring back information. I'm sure it'll trickle into our podcast here as well as into my own community that I share yoga with in Owen Sound. And I just read about Diane that her yoga journey began in 1978 while she was attending a weekend yoga with Yogi Bhajan. And I think this is pretty cool, and I feel really connected to that, as my first yoga teacher training was led by someone who studied with Yogi Bhajan. So I just thought I'd share that. If you are enjoying the podcast episodes here, I would love it if you would subscribe to our podcast. So you can do that in iTunes or on your podcast app. I would also really like to read out today a few of the reviews that are there now. So here's a review by Yoga Girl 2. I love this first episode of The Connected Yoga Teacher. It offered insightful ideas for those of us in the challenging world of care teaching, whether that be yoga, personal development, coaching, or any healing profession. Shannon, the host, and Erin, the interviewee, both offered sage advice. Some podcasts are too long to stay focused. This one is just right. I can't wait for the next episode. Thank you, Shannon, for creating The Connected Yoga Teacher. So thanks so much for sharing that review. There's another one here. Hi, Shannon. I've been blown away by all the positivity around the Connected Yoga Teacher, especially for someone like me who lives rurally and about an hour away from an actual yoga studio. It is great to feel like I'm not alone. Lots of great advice offered here in the first podcast, even for someone like me who only teaches 3 classes a week. It is still really good to look out for the clues that one might be feeling burnt out and possible solutions to deal with it. Much appreciation for this. Keep them coming. And then Vicky wrote one as well. I absolutely love the Connected Yoga Teacher. Shannon is so knowledgeable and passionate about educating and bringing the yoga teaching community together. Thank you for everything you do, Shannon. I look forward to all the podcast goodness to come. So thanks so much, you guys. As much as it can feel a little lonely as a yoga teacher, I'm realizing that also podcasters feel the same way. So here I am in my little office recording episodes for you, and it means the world to me when I see a comment on our website, when I see that you're sharing it, when I see that you're asking questions, and when you're leaving reviews. So thanks, you guys. That's what keeps me going on this. And if you have questions, topics that you'd like on future episodes of either the podcast or the weekly live show, let me know. If you're wondering what the weekly live show is, go to theconnectedyogateacher.com, click on live show. I have a Facebook live show every Monday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thanks, you guys, and have a wonderful week.